Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of USA Battle Royale. Let's get right into it. Pennsylvania is invading Southeast. So the state to the southeast of Pennsylvania is going to be New Jersey. So Pennsylvania will therefore be invading into New Jersey. And officially they're doing this because New Jersey was a puppet, because New Jersey was given a new government by New York that sort of made them a New Yorker puppet state. And so they're going to liberate New Jersey, but also they just want to take New Jersey's land. So they will pretty quickly start invading into New Jersey, and of course New York will declare war on them. But Ohio, West Virginia urges them not to declare war on Pennsylvania because Ohio, West Virginia doesn't want to get into that right now, which severs relations between these two. They still remain in the Green Alliance, but they're kind of upset with each other. Either way, New York will start an invasion into Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania will continue their invasion of New Jersey. New Jersey will revolt against New York, allowing Pennsylvania to fully occupy New Jersey. And New York's invasion isn't going as well as they hoped it would. And with both Maine and Massachusetts threatening to join in on Pennsylvania's side, New York agrees to keep the front lines as what they are. Let's just see what the new borders look like. And this is what the new borders look like with New Jersey being removed from the map. Virginia is invading Southeast. So the state to the southeast, quote unquote, of Virginia is going to be North Carolina. And Virginia will line up their troops on the border with North Carolina for a while, and North Carolina will line up their troops on their border as well. And there's a long standoff between the two of them before finally Virginia moves their troops into North Carolina. North Carolina was expecting it, but they also weren't expecting the quantity of troops that Virginia would move in or the amount of tech Virginia would have. And it looks like this before the North Carolinian army is able to start standing up to Virginia. And these two states are extremely evenly matched, so it doesn't really feel like anything important is going to happen. Ohio, West Virginia is supporting Virginia in the war. Georgia and South Carolina are supporting North Carolina. The war is pretty even and not much happens in it. However, they continue going to war with each other for a pretty long time. So we're actually going to check back in on this war after another event. California, finally doing something, will create an alliance with Ohio, West Virginia. This is not just California joining the Green Alliance. What happens is California creates a brand new alliance. They claim to be the successor of the Magenta Alliance from episodes 1 through 3. And their goal in this is to get states from the Green Alliance to defect to their alliance, the first one to do so being Ohio, West Virginia, who's fed up with New York and also with the Western coalition of the Green Alliance and feels like they could use a new partner. Immediately, another state that joins this alliance is Virginia, which could have some ramifications for later on. Arizona also joins the Pink Alliance because they realize the predicament they're in, as does Oregon. So the Pink Alliance is starting to shape itself up as maybe a counter to the Green Alliance, but it's also trying to get states to defect from the Green Alliance, so maybe it's not. Either way, the formation of the Pink Alliance will have major effects on this war, as now Ohio, West Virginia officially being able to send troops into North Carolina is going to really just start to pick on North Carolina, and it gets to the point that Georgia has to officially join the war on North Carolina's side in order to ensure that North Carolina doesn't just immediately get rolled through. Ohio, West Virginia will start an invasion into Georgia from here, with the help of Virginia allowing them to move their troops through, extending the front line, but allowing North Carolina to push back in the east, almost all the way towards Virginia. However, South Carolina stubbornly refuses to join the war on either side, angering both sides. And because Georgia had kind of planned on South Carolina joining in, they kind of get unnecessarily angry at South Carolina and almost threaten to invade into South Carolina. And after a while, they realize this war is probably just going nowhere and decide to just leave it in exchange for troops being abandoned. And at this point, North Carolina sees no hope and agrees to surrender. So let's see what the peace treaty looks like. And this is what the peace treaty looks like. Virginia will again be doing something, invading South. If you thought that was the end of it, you were wrong, because as soon as North Carolina accepts the peace treaty and withdraws from even more Virginian territory, as well as kind of de-arming their military for a little while, Virginia takes the opportunity of having just been appeased by North Carolina and having functionally forced Georgia to stay neutral to invade into North Carolina again, this time hoping to eliminate them for good. and North Carolina is caught extremely off guard. They barely even had a military after being forced to disarm themselves due to the last conflict peace treaty. And Georgia, as part of their peace treaty, also has to stay neutral, and they don't really want to violate that right now. So North Carolina basically has no hope. South Carolina refuses to join in until the very end, when they actually join in against North Carolina to try and secure some land for themselves, getting this much land before the rest is conquered by Virginia. And so there will be a peace treaty between Virginia and South Carolina dividing up the state. And this is what that looks like. Montana will be invading Northwest. So Northwest, quote unquote, of Montana is actually going to be Washington. And so what happens is Montana joins the Pink Alliance after Washington refuses to, because they want to help Oregon invade into Washington, which Oregon was already going to do. And it just happens that Montana is the first to move their troops in, and they are moving northwest when they move their troops in, so this fully fits that role I just did. And anyways, Montana is doing pretty well. The Green Alliance obviously condemns this invasion as Oregon starts putting troops on their northeastern border, and trying to connect up with the front line created by Montana as their west coast starts getting pretty badly invaded, which is also the most populous part of their state, by Washington. Montana starts bridging the gap, focusing most of their invasions over here, but Oregon gets pushed back a little bit, and it's clear at this point Washington is not going to just fall to Montana and Oregon, even with California slightly helping out. California is not helping out by enough to make a difference, especially with Idaho, Nevada supporting Washington. And so, because they can't get this to quite work out, they settle with Washington for a treaty in which they get to take some territory from Washington, and Washington withdraws from their territory, which Washington probably shouldn't have agreed to, but the Green Alliance wanted them to, and I'll explain shortly. And so this is what the borders look like afterwards. You can see there's this weird Washington exclave over here that Idaho is given by Washington, or Idaho, Nevada is given, in exchange for Washington joining the Green Alliance, which they really wanted to do, but weren't able to without both leaving the war on any way, and this was the best way for them, as well as giving Idaho that little bit of land. So this is what that looks like. Iowa will invade Northeast. So following both of them having withdrawn from the Green Alliance, Iowa is setting their sights on Wisconsin because they want Wisconsin's territory, and they will move their troops into Wisconsin without even building up significantly first, which means Wisconsin had barely any time to respond. And because of that, the invasion will be very swift, and they'll be able to get a lot of Wisconsin's territory before Wisconsin even notices. And Iowa has a friend, an unlikely ally, in Illinois. Illinois is still stronger than they were at the start of the series, given that they have a lot more territory. And they're still one of the strongest states in the Union. So although they've been weakened significantly by the war in the last episode, they are still willing to help out Iowa in order to get some more land for themselves. And unfortunately for Wisconsin, this isn't going to go well, as Chicago welcomes Illinois in reinvading them. And Wisconsin pleads out to both the Green and Pink Alliances, but both of them, realizing Wisconsin also pleaded out to the other one, will ignore Wisconsin's cries for help, while also not invading into Wisconsin. And Wisconsin eventually has to surrender to the invaders and just see what they can get out of this peace treaty. And oh boy, was Wisconsin crippled by this peace treaty. Like, look at the territory they have left. It's like basically split into even parts, and it's 90% territory that was originally owned by Michigan. Definitely not a good peace treaty for Wisconsin, but they had to accept it. New York will be invading north? There's only one way it's possible for New York to invade north, and that is by invading north from Connecticut into Massachusetts, which is the only thing that I think makes sense. I guess they could also invade into Wisconsin, which would also make sense, but here they're invading into Massachusetts. And as soon as they even start invading into Massachusetts, Maine will join in, assuming Pennsylvania will also join in, but Pennsylvania decides to stay out of it. However, Ohio, West Virginia will also join in on the invasion of New York, which is like really surprising. However, they're not putting that much attention to it. They're mostly focused on taking New York's territory from Michigan. And in fact, New York agrees to just give them all of that territory in exchange for not having them be any more involved in the war, which is bad for New York, but it's even worse for the states that are now at war with them, as they no longer have any other states that could possibly start attacking them, and they invade all the way through western Massachusetts before they get to the coastal parts that are actually like populated. And they do the same strategy that they did a while ago in Maine, or I think New Hampshire actually was the state that did this in Maine, where they invade into the unpopulated parts of Maine in order to make sure Maine can't have any angles from which to attack them before invading into the populated areas. And Maine, seeing where things are going, will decide to surrender early, whereas Massachusetts will take the more noble but less intelligent route of fighting till the very end, and they will be fully captured by New York. Here, Maine was given two options. They could either cede almost all of their territory to New York, or they could change their government to one that New York would install. They chose to change their government, and so now they're basically a puppet of New York, which is very good for New York, who now basically has all of the Northeast in their grip. Georgia will invade Northeast. So Georgia is kind of upset with South Carolina for a lot of things, but the main one is that South Carolina basically betrayed North Carolina by invading into them when they could have helped out North Carolina, because Georgia was still on a peace treaty, South Carolina wasn't. So 2 times in a row, South Carolina refused to help out North Carolina, which was Georgia's ally, and Georgia will not be having any of this. They explained to South Carolina they would invade into them if they didn't help, and South Carolina didn't help, and now they're being invaded into by Georgia, just as Georgia had said, and they are not really doing well because Georgia is so much more powerful than them, one of the most powerful states in the country right now versus South Carolina. And just to make it even worse, Virginia joins in, invading from the north, betraying their former ally in invading North Carolina to try and get even more land. And unfortunately for South Carolina, this is not going to go well for them. At some point, their government surrenders to Georgia, but they never surrender to Virginia, so they end up just getting completely conquered rather than being able to survive, which means they're just going to get divided up. There's a lot more skirmishes happening between Georgia and Virginia that are not official, and they aren't officially at war with each other before a peace treaty is finally agreed upon. So let's see what that looks like. And this is what that looks like. Colorado will make an alliance with Oregon. In one of the most shocking moves of the series so far, Colorado will first leave the Green Alliance, and then after a few months, join the Pink Alliance, which perplexes a lot of the Western Green Alliance. But basically, the problem is they never wanted Washington to join their alliance. They didn't really like Washington. They'd always had a rivalry and kind of hated each other from the beginning. And so when Washington was let into the Green Alliance, their government immediately made a decision that they were going to figure out a way to leave. Eventually, they decided they should just join the Pink Alliance, so they made secret arrangements with California, then left the Green Alliance, then waited a few months to ensure that it didn't look like they were specifically leaving the Green Alliance to join the Pink Alliance, and then they joined the Pink Alliance. But that is what they were trying to do the whole time. For the final event of this video, Arizona will make an alliance with Minnesota. So what happens here is Minnesota's people actually start to rebel against their government. And obviously they hate the Green Alliance that they were forced into, so they want to be joining into the Pink Alliance. And they don't like the previous government they had, but they want a democracy, and they haven't had that in a while. So the rebellion will form in the east to join the Pink Alliance. And although the government is still mostly a puppet of South Dakota, they are able to act independently, and they are able to realize that they should just join the Pink Alliance, and betray their South Dakotan brethren, which is exactly what they do. Which means that the Pink Alliance is now officially more powerful than the Green Alliance, if it wasn't already when Colorado left it. And the Green Alliance had better watch out if they want to stay as the top dogs in the country, because most of the powerful states in the country are not with them. But that's where we'll end this episode. Comment down below who you think is going to win, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe if you don't want to miss when more of these episodes come out. And with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.